bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time. It's clear to see from up here. The world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors.
Hello, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, Warrior of Love. And today you're in Soul Talk. And thank you for being here with us. And my name is, I'm using the Warrior of Love since several years ago. I am an artist of authenticity, which means I am an artist of traditional sense, and I also help people to master the art of love. And in Soul Talk, we have always amazing guests, and today is not the exception. We have a very special guest, and her name is Shannon Cormier. She's a CEO in, I hope I say it right, I Empower Living, a center for transformation, works with clients to refuel, heal, grow, and flourish in order to shine their unique shine and confidently lead the way forward. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for accepting my invitation for being in Soul Talk.
Oh, thank you, Monica, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with you.
Tell us a little bit, what did you do more specifically?
Well, yeah, so empowered living is about shifting from, all the external pressures and influences that impact our life and our choices. So, empowerment is often influenced by so many external things like, paycheck and what success is in terms of how it's defined in our families and in our society, in our workplaces. And so empowered living is about taking a step back from all those externally defined things and how that influences us. And it's like the internet, right? We have the internet of all kinds of information and, things that fuel what we think and is important. But then we also have this internet, this inner knowing and this inner knowledge that we often get unplugged from with all the noise of the internet of the world or the external influences of the world. And so empowered living is about shifting from and unplugging from that external empowerment or that external influence and really plugging into that internet and inner knowing of, that soul, the soul knowing and that soul purpose that each of us has.
Yes, I do agree. We are all human beings. We are programmed.
Oh, so
actually, we believe what they tell us we are, and how we should be happy, how we should act.
Yeah.
And that's where you get us stuck because we lose ourselves.
Right. Exactly. We lose sense of that, that unique soul spark that we have within us, right? And each of us has that unique soul spark that makes us who we are, that defines who and what our soul is all about and the purpose that we've come here to fulfill. And so I totally agree. There's so much programming. I don't know if you know anything about Carolyn Myss. She's a author, teacher around spirituality and around, just that kind of spiritual knowing and soul knowing. And she uses an analogy that Teresa of Avalon had originally talked about, and it's about that inner castle, right? And so the ground floor is kind of where we spend a lot of our time, and that's where we pick up the programming around, or the family belief systems about society's belief systems. It's about what the schools that we go to and how they sort of mold and shaped our belief systems and our conditioning of how we see the world and how we perceive the world. And so that has an impact on what we understand to be true for the things around us, but also what we understand to be true about ourselves, right? Like people talk over us in what they see in us. Like, oh, you know, you're a good mechanic. Well, that person might not want anything to do with to be a mechanic, but because that's what they've been told for so long, then they kind of fall into that track, right? And so the concept of this inner castle and the concept behind empowered living, it's about going up in that castle, and each layer that you go up in the castle, you can look down and see things from a completely different perspective and understanding. And as you're going up, you're tapping more and more, you're unplugging from that conditioned sort of way of seeing and doing and understanding, and getting a more clear sense of an inner understanding about who you are, about where you fit in the world, about how you have influence and impact in your own life, and as well as in the world around you. So I really like that analogy of, doing the work of, and you can think of it when you're in a building yourself, like when we're on the ground floor, we can only see what's around us, right? And so that inner work and that plugging into that inner power is about going up the levels. And if you consider the difference between the ground floor perspective and the penthouse view, how different that would be, right? And how different understanding you would have about your world and your life when you're looking from the penthouse view opposed to the ground floor view.
And not only that, we are going to, the people might think, many of us, it took us a lot, to believe in ourselves,
Yes.
what we deserve, what we're worth, and so forth, because we let other people evaluate us and tell us what we can have.
Yeah.
And that's a very antique programming, but is still effective to this day. And
lots of times without us even realizing it, right? Like they operate under the surface without us even being aware that they're there. And so that work is that work that we do is to help uncover some of those things. Whether you call it conditioned beliefs, whether you call it encoded beliefs, where something happened to you when you were young and it got encoded into your cognition, and without even realizing it, it becomes a filter in the decisions that you make and how you show up for yourself and for life, right?
Yes, even without going to past lives in this life, the majority of the human beings we get programmed when we're little.
Yes.
We become people pleasers when we're little. We're trying to please our mom and dad, siblings, teachers, or any authority figure.
Yeah.
And that's where everything started. So, and then we get lost. We think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
How do you?
Because we don't know any different, right?
Yes.
We don't know any different. Sometimes I'll use this example. When I was small, I was very very expressive and very bold, right? I wore bright colors. I would say what was on my mind, and 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, it just out of the mouths of babes, right? They'll say what they see and say whatever it is that they're thinking, and I was very much that way. And I remember, with the help of Rosalind, one of my coaches, we kind of went back to figure out what this was, and I was about 4 years old, and I was told, "Don't be bold. Don't be bold." And what that encoded in me was, or that message encoded in me, and in a 4-year-old's mind, I thought, okay, well, it's not okay to be me. It's not okay to say what I feel. It's not okay to say what I see. It's not okay to be seen, right?
Yes.
And so, follow that through, that encoded message. It's not true, right? Because it was a message that I got when I was 4, but it encoded and became a conditioned belief within my thinking. And then over time throughout my life, it impacted how I showed up, because Don't Be Bold was in the background playing, reminding me it's not okay to shine bright. It's not okay to be fully heard. It's not okay to say what I feel. And so how does that impact? It impacts the relationships that I go in. It impacts how I show up for work, for my job. It impacts how I show up in relationships. It impacts how I show up for myself, even, right? And holding back what it is I truly want to say or what I'm truly feeling, because it's not okay to be bold, right? So until I sort of unearthed that, it impacted the clothes I wore. It impacted, I would never wear red lipstick because that is just way too bold, right? And so until I worked with Roz, who we mutually know, I didn't realize that that was an encoded message impacting my choices that I was making to this present day, even though it was encoded when I was 4, right? Yeah, it's really interesting, and yeah, it's just an interesting complexity of being human is understanding how these things get encoded in us.
And at the same time, it is so simple and so
So
complicated,
simple.
depending on how we want to see it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but because we have all this, we forgot who we are.
Yeah.
That's the issue. We
Yeah.
let everybody give us our value and tell
Yeah.
us what we should have and what if we shouldn't.
Right.
I was born as the youngest daughter,
Mm.
and my siblings, and after 11 years. So my my mother was already 37 when I was born, and my dad was 8 years older than my mother. So they were already already enjoying their lives when I came.
Yeah.
So I did not had my programming was that I was born to take care of them until the last day, and I did not had anything else to do in this world except take care of them. And that was a very hard conflict inside of me, because I, I even hate nursery. I
Yeah.
can't sleep a lot because I can't,
Yeah.
and those little programs that people do not put attention what they're telling to their kids.
Yes.
They're limiting them, and just to remove those blocks and those programs
Yeah.
are very, very tough.
Absolutely.
But thank God I can see now the new generations, they're actually putting more attention what they're teaching their kids,
Yes.
and you're giving them the value and saying, hey, I'm proud of you when they're young. And that can make the difference. How do you work with people?
Well, it really depends on the person, hey? Like everybody is at their own unique place. And so the very first thing is to meet them where they're at. There's no expectation in terms of, you need to be here in order for us to work together, because it's where is that, right? So just really being able to meet somebody where they're at. And because a lot of these programs kind of, like we said, work under the surface, that you're not even aware of them really, or that they're there. I have a background in mental health that goes back, 20 years or so. And so one of the big keys, I think, is in our patterns, our tendencies, and our mindset. And so if we don't know what the underlying condition or the underlying condition programming might be yet, let's take a look at your behaviors, at your patterns, at your tendencies. And that's going to really help unlock, some of that stuff that's happening under the surface that you might not even be aware of. One of the tools that I like using is what I call the Bear Essentials tool. And it takes the word bear, so B-E-A-R. So the animal, the bear, a bear, is very habitual in nature. They're if you put a cabin on the path that they walk, they will not go around that pattern. They will go through that pattern or through that cabin. They get on a path, and that's what they stay on. And isn't that true for humans in so many ways? Like, we are often in such an autopilot that we're doing today what we did yesterday, because that's what we do. We just, we do the same thing, we follow the same path. And so this Bear Essentials tool helps us kind of disrupt and get to know what some of those patterns are, because we're often not even aware that they're happening. And so when you take the word bear, B-E-A-R, it breaks down to beliefs, influence emotions, emotions impact or actions, and actions lead to results. And our results reinforce those beliefs that are happening, often under the surface. And so I'll work with folks by starting with the results, because that's something that's more tangible. We can see it, we can kind of look at it and watch it and help break it down. And so, we look at what are some of the results that you're experiencing, whether that be in relationships, whether that be in work, whether that be, at home with family, whether that be with weight or whatever the result that they want to take a look at. We really kind of deep dive into, okay, so what is the results that you're experiencing? And really paying attention to some of the details of that. And then we take that step up to, okay, so what are the actions you're taking to lead to some of the results? And really getting into like the big actions and the little micro actions, like the day-to-day choices that you're making that lead to and create those results that you're experiencing, right? So if the result that we're looking at happens to be around, my bank account is always empty. Well, what are some of the actions that you're taking to lead to those results? And so we can look at, I buy $5 coffees every day. I go on spending sprees. I don't make enough money. So any of those kinds of actions, kind of really getting into the nitty gritty around, okay, so what are the actions that are creating those results? And then once we kind of have a handle on that, we move up the scale into the emotions, right? And so what emotions are you feeling when you spend your $5 coffee, or when you purchase your $5 coffee? What's the emotion behind wanting and needing that? What's the emotion behind the spending sprees? What's the avoidance or the distraction or the, like, whatever the emotional driving force behind those actions in creating those results? And then we go to the belief system. So what are the beliefs that are supporting these emotions? And it can be anywhere from, well, money is, if you have money, you're greedy. If, money's dirty, money's this, money's that. financial freedom's this. All of those belief systems and different sort of program messages that you heard growing up or that you witnessed. You didn't even have to, somebody didn't even have to tell you. You could have witnessed and overheard your parents talking about it one day, or you could have, or teachers talking about it one day, and you internalized that as a belief system. And it's now really influencing and pushing those emotions, which are creating that, or leading to those actions, which are creating your results.
I do agree. The majority of the people, they have a mentality of lack of something.
So much.
And
Yeah.
lack of fears.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of not being accepted or not being loved or not giving, or the lack of money, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
or lack of time, or
Yeah.
lack of whatever it is. But those are just beliefs.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, it's usually things that we picked up when we were kids, like our little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, in that developmental phase of our life up till 7, we were sponges for the things that were around us. And so, like I said, we could have just overheard some conversations, or we could have seen a parent struggling over paying bills, and you kind of internalize that, oh, life is really hard, I'm going to struggle, like it's hard paying bills, or it's hard living, or whatever, however it got encoded into your thinking and into your brain, and then it kind of plays out over your lifetime until you become aware of it, right? And that's where the magic can happen, because once you become aware of it, you can start, as an adult person, now you can start questioning, well, is this true? Right? And not in terms from a place of judgment, because I truly believe that everybody does the best they can with what they know in the moment, right? And so, yes, we picked up those things. Circumstances might not have been positive or good, but we have opportunity now to just get curious about it, right? You can't go back and change anything, but we can get compassionately curious about getting to understand it from a different perspective. So you're going from the ground floor of understanding and kind of lifting yourself up and looking at it from a whole different perspective and getting curious. Well, what did it mean as a 4-year-old? And is it true now? Is this something that still works for me? And if it's not, then what are some of the options to shift it and change it, disrupt it, and then shift and change it?
And at the same time, understand that whatever situation we got into it, and maybe it was a wrong choice according to the society,
Yeah,
it was perfect and exactly what you were needing to live, so you can learn that lesson.
absolutely.
But if you observe it, like you mentioned, if
Yeah.
you don't observe it, you're going to repeat the same story all over again because you did not observe it.
Right.
Until you actually learn that lesson. And that's so hard for people to see. They're so afraid. And how do you work with people that are so afraid? I have my own things, but I would like to know yours. How do you work with people so they can become the observer of the situation they're at?
Yeah. So starting small, right? And yeah, starting small with what they are comfortable with. Because I do feel that once people just start to see things from a different perspective, it kind of opens the doorway to, okay, what else can I look at, right? And using a lot of analogies, I find really helps, right? So you're not, so we can externalize it from us, because the more we keep it inside, it's much bigger than what it really is on the outside. Our minds are incredibly complex machines that can really make things much bigger than what it actually is once we kind of separate it, right? So that's another tool, is just kind of giving it a story and externalizing it and saying, okay, so this is it. This is if this fear had a name, what would the name be? It could be free to fear. Okay, so free to fear, what does she look like? What does she sound like? What is she saying? What's her message? And so externalizing it from the identity piece so that we can actually see it on the outside. And then it's easier to kind of break down and work with, because you're not internalizing it. You're not internally identifying with it as you, but you're able to kind of set it outside of yourself for a little bit and be, again, compassionately curious about understanding, what message do you have for me? Like, you have been a part of my life to protect me, and I get that. But you need to help me understand why. You need to help me understand what the root is, so that we can decide if it's still needed or if it's not.
That's also at the same time when we're honoring our emotions.
Yeah.
Because I do remember in my case, many years ago, I tried to hide many of my emotions because it was easier to hide them from everybody else. So like that, I was not vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's when of course, I was getting sick.
Yeah.
And so forth, because I was hiding those emotions and I was eating those emotions. So they have to come out in one way or the other, as a sickness or a depression, or it can come out in any shape or form in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the majority of people do not understand, that they're provoking that sickness, that depression, the way they are observing life in the pessimist way, or whatever form they're doing it, is in a negative way, because they're not honoring themselves. And I hope our listeners, that the ones are seeing the program right now or later on, they can start actually putting attention to those emotions, because that's where it can create their shift.
Mm-hmm. See, emotions they're normal and natural. Like, they're just, it's a part of being human. And how I see emotions they're not right or wrong, they're not good or bad. It's energy. So the E, energy in motion. And so, the anger is not good or bad. It's an energy of its own right. And so when I have the analogy of a a kettle on the stove, right? So you put the kettle on the stove, and if you slowly turn up the heat, you would think, okay, nothing's happening. I got a handle on this. I can handle these emotions, right? But over time, and as things happen in our lives, it's like turning up the dial and turning up the heat. And over time, the internal pressure from the energy and motion in the kettle is going to start to build. And over time, like you said, that energy has to come up and out one way or another, whether that's outbursts, whether that's in disease or illness. It's going to find a way out. People get unexplained rashes. People, there's all kinds of ways that those emotions, or that energy in motion, is going to find a way out, because like the kettle on the stove, we have a boiling point that we can no longer suppress or keep under wraps, right? And that pressure is going to come out one way or another. And so finding ways to release some of that pressure is so important. And there's so many different ways to do that. Like all the different ways that you cover with the different speakers you have in your podcast. Like, there's so many different ways. The thing is to find something that works for you, and that could be journaling. It could be speaking to a counselor, it could be working with a coach, it can be working with an energy healer, it can be working, and it can be a combination of all kinds of things. But it's that conscious choice to recognize that, yeah, I got some pressure happening here. And I need to find some release, right? Exercise is a great thing.
And unfortunately, the people unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what it is, because I feel like everybody, when they finally wake up to what is really happening to them, is when they touch rock bottom.
Yeah.
That's when something really drastic happened in their lives.
Yeah.
Wars, death, or a sickness,
Yeah.
or a horrible dark night. So that's a horrible depression.
Yeah.
That's the when finally said, I need to do something. But
Yeah.
where do I start? That's when they touch the rock bottom. That's when they have to make the shift, and they're forced to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And some of us have to hit rock bottom a couple times,
Oh yeah,
right?
many
Because
so
yeah, exactly. And it's one of the greatest lessons I've learned over the last couple of years, because I did hit my rock bottom, having lots of different losses, different traumatic events kind of all happen at the same time. I finally hit the bottom, and long enough that I listened to say, okay, I need to take a step back here, because my personality is I'm a striver and I'm a survivor. And so I can hit rock bottom, get myself back up, dust myself back off, and then keep going. Right. So this is like my fourth or fifth rock bottom, probably. But
I believe every time we go, we all gonna have many.
oh yes. Oh yeah.
Every time we go to the next level,
Yeah.
again we're gonna hit there.
Yeah.
Rock bottom again. So
Yeah.
we can go to the next level. We have a different understanding. We change our
Yeah.
conscience. And every time we're going to go to the next one, it's going to repeat something is going to happen, because we have to put attention in something that we've been denying. It
Yes.
doesn't matter what part of your path you are.
Yeah.
We're going to hit there again
Yeah.
and again. And well, hopefully not with the same mistake.
No.
Hopefully with something new.
Yeah. And like you said, it's all different, right? Because the greatest thing about being human is that we learn from, we learn. And so just like grief accumulates if we don't pause and work through it, we also have that ability to learn. And so when we do hit rock bottom, it's again, we're not hitting the same rock bottom, like you said, right? Because we've elevated, we've leveled, we've come up a level, we've learned things. And so it's different each time. But one of my regular coping mechanisms was to work, because it brings me great satisfaction and joy, the work that I was doing, right? But it also became a really big crutch for me. And so I kind of fell into those workaholic patterns and tendencies. And a part of one of the reasons I fell into that was because I was avoiding and I was running away from those things that had been accumulating that I wasn't paying attention to. And so this last time that I fell, I often say I was flat out face down with my ass kicked on the arena floor. And it wasn't until I said, okay, instead of just getting up and dusting off, I'm going to stay here for a little bit and let that stuff catch up with me. And the greatest lesson and gift that I learned was it was far more exhausting constantly running, trying to stay a little bit ahead of those things that were hiding behind the corner than it was to just pause and stop and work through them. But I will say that by this point, I had been to enough rock bottoms to know and to build support systems and strategies around me that it was easier to turn around and face some of those things that I was kind of trying to avoid and numb and distract myself from, and not have to turn around and face. So it's really important as part of that process of working through those things is making sure you have that support system around you.
And I truly believe that we're always guided, even if we're not putting attention.
Absolutely.
I am a workaholic too. And every time I'm trying to avoid a problem,
Yeah.
work more. And when I was younger, I used to work 24 hours if I could.
Yeah.
But my body is the
That's
one.
why we get along,
Yes.
Monica. I see you.
But my body is the one that stopped me. My
Yeah.
guides will send me a flu or send me a temperature or send me something. It's like, you need to stop and take a few days and you have to think about this or you have to observe this.
Yeah.
And it's like they force me. It's like, you're going to go to bed and you can't do anything in there. You can't work in there.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're going to be just thinking about this. And that's when I'm like, oh, okay, I need to put attention to this.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
only way I actually heal faster. I learned that in the hard way, that if I wanted to heal faster for whatever I have, I better put attention.
Yes. Absolutely, right? And that's also, that's also one of the gifts of paying attention is you get to learn your patterns. You get to learn your like processes and tendencies, right? So you recognize that when that flu comes or when that temperature comes, you're like, oh geez, okay, I know what this is, right? And you recognize what it is so that you then pause and do the work that you know that you need to do. Whereas, before you might have just worked through it and not even recognize it, right?
Yes, can I say an example that happened to me
Yeah.
about work and so forth? When I arrived to United States, coming from Mexico, I did not want to be here, so I was sad, but I was trying to avoid it. So I find a job and start working in a bank, and that was not my ideal job as a creative person. And I was feeling miserable. So every time I finished my job and I drive home, I cry all the way. And before I arrive, I clean my face and go down and how's everything? Everything is great. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
And the next day repeat the same story. And until I could not hold my crying in the job, and I just start pouring and pouring. I was like, but I did not want it to, and my body completely, my body was just crying and crying, and that day, like, I went to the bathroom. I asked in front of the mirror, like, I am miserable here. I can't be working here. And I just looking at my mirror and looking at my eyes, and like, okay, I need to quit now. And that's when I realized, okay, I quit that day
Wow.
my job because I could not stop crying.
Yeah.
And that's when I started analyzing, okay, I have to honor myself. What do I want to do with my life? Because obviously I was not good at doing as a teller. It was making me be miserable for a creative person. And that's just one of the things that can happen. And if we don't put attention, we go back, we clean our crying, and we go back and work, and we continue feeling miserable in the same job.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, thank you for sharing that. Because I was similar, like, and that's that soul, those soul whisperings. And for you, it wasn't so much a whisper, probably to say, this is done. I can't do this. But I think we're in a phase and place in human history right now where that's happening more and more, right? And people are getting those whispers and outright calls to say, I can't do this anymore. And that's your soul reaching to you to say, this is not, there's so much more This is not you, right? And that's, and I think the pandemic, as horrible as it's been, one of the gifts that it has given us is that the power of pause. So it has literally disrupted everybody's life. And we're hearing a lot in terms of the fear-based perspective. We're hearing a lot of the great resignation. Everybody's resigning, and we have employment crisis issues, and we have staffing crisis. But on the flip side of that is like, so many people are waking up. It's such a blessing to have people say, I can't do this anymore. And we're really in a phase of the great reimagination to say, what else is there? There's got to be more to this life than just work and existence and survival and autopilot, because that's what the pandemic offered us, is that pause and that space to say, what else could there be? And in creating that space and starting to ask those questions, the soul in so many people has perked up and said, we cannot do this anymore. This is the time. Let's figure something out that aligns more with that inner net and that inner power to live an empowered life.
I do agree. Unfortunately, as human beings, we don't learn from our successes.
No.
We learn from our failures. And you're very right. In the pandemic, it actually, yes, many people died. Many
Yes.
people got sick and so forth. And it was very unfortunate for many of us. I lost family.
Lots. Yeah.
But you're right. It took us to dig inside of us.
Yeah.
And many marriages finished in the pandemic, because they realized, like, oh my God, I have to be with this guy or this woman.
Yeah.
For
This is not okay.
I can't stand them. It's not going to work.
Yeah. When we're all busy and doing our separate things, everything's okay. But when we're all in the same space for an unknown amount of time, it's not okay.
Yes, and the same happened with the job. It's like you were working at home. You got put in your hours, probably in shorts with a nice top and makeup, but you didn't have to wear high heels, and you were saving a bunch of money in that way. And then suddenly you have to go back to work, and you have to now dress up and put high heels and so forth. And like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like my boss. I don't like the co-workers. I don't like the kind of job that I was doing.
Right.
And yes, you're right. That brought many changes.
Yeah.
Every single, and right now in the history of the world, it's happening so many things at the same time.
So many things.
So many changes. And we knew this time it was gonna come.
Yeah.
But it is hitting us one after another one.
Yeah. So many of what was considered, or what could have been considered, the foundational pillars of society are starting to be questioned and crumbling, right? So whether that be some of the religious institutions, or politics, or just the unthinkable has now become a reality, where so in that foundational shakeup, people are starting to question also, like, I want more meaning. We need to be more purposeful. We need to be more intentional with what we're doing. And so, we are in a phase of the unthinkable, and a great awakening from what was into what could be, right? And I do think that people are starting to become more open and leaning into what possibilities could be.
But something that also I noticed that happened in that time, it was not only that. Yes, we did have many people that commit suicide in that time.
Yeah.
We have a lot of depression in that time, and the
Yeah.
people became antisocial
Yeah.
at the same time. And that part, I still have friends that they refuse to go out, or
Mm.
they're so, they say they're so afraid to get corona or whatever.
Yeah.
But I believe that is just afraid to be around other people.
Yeah.
And that part I still do not know where it's gonna end for the majority, because we got used to 2 years in lockdown.
Yeah.
It was too long. And I don't
Yeah.
know how those changes are gonna bring for the planet,
Yeah.
because now they're used to. Now they decide I don't want to be around people.
Yeah.
When as human beings we have to be.
We are wired for connection,
Mm,
right? That's the thing about humans is we are tribal in by nature, right? We survive in tribe, we survive in community, and to live in isolation has so many different impacts that we don't even probably realize as of yet. I think it's going to come out more and more as we learn more. Um, but absolutely, I totally agree that we're wired for connection, and a part of finding forward and building forward into what we need to define yet as the new normal, because we're not ever going back, right? And I think that might be part of the fear is that in between phase of the unknown. um, and so, part of the process of finding and building forward is going to be that process of reconnecting and reaching out and rebuilding what community and tribe and village looks like.
and maybe you need to change friends or husband or jobs or something like that to get comfortable for now the new you.
Yeah.
It is fine.
Yeah.
We're all, the universe continue expanding. Why not
Yeah.
us?
Exactly. Right. And so, yeah, so I do believe that because we are creatures of connection, like we are wired for connection.
Yes.
And so part of that process of moving forward is, and it could be just be, baby steps. It's one step at a time. And so how can I connect with somebody in a meaningful way and start with that, right?
And something that I don't notice too happening in the 2020 when they started the vaccines, it was the great division
Oh, yes. Yeah.
worldwide. The anti-vax with the vax,
Yeah.
and the judgments of each part of it, because you put the vaccine or because you didn't put the vaccine,
Yeah.
either way, without respecting the choices of each one of it.
Yeah.
One and both groups were having fear.
Yeah.
That's something we can agree, because that's why they put the vaccines, or that's why they didn't put the vaccines,
That's right.
and that created more conflict worldwide.
Hmm.
There was that more rejection and that more division, and that actually is not helping the human being. And how, I don't know, as coaches, as healers, as people that work in these ways with other people, how we are going to manage our clients
Yeah.
without removing our own judgment
Yeah.
of our own choices, back or no back.
Yeah.
Because if we actually talk about what we chose,
Hmm.
we're in a way that people are going to feel judged by
Hmm.
us, because there's always the fear of judgments.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think part of the process is, again, that's where I think this compassionate curiosity is really helpful, right? Because it's compassionate curiosity over judgment. And so, um, and the idea with that is we all have our own choice to make, right? Um, And if we look at it from a compassionate curiosity lens, then it accepts that in you, I see that you made your choices based on what you know and what you understood at the time. But I've based my choices on what I know and what I understood at the time. Neither one is right or wrong.
Mhm.
It's what we chose to do in the moment that made the most sense for us,
Yes.
right? And so whenever I felt myself kind of getting drawn into that drama and that emotional reaction place of mostly fear, right? Because that's like one of those, it was drilled into us. Fear was one of the leading things that was used as a tool throughout this whole COVID pandemic thing. And so whenever I felt myself getting drawn into that, I would try and get myself to take a step back and say, okay, I need to go up my castle and see what else is going on here, right? What is influencing me? What is drawing me in? What is real for me now, right now? And acknowledging that, somebody else is in their own castle, and I don't know what their story is. I don't know what their understanding of life is, or the understanding of their reality is, and so I can't make a decision for them because I don't have access to that.
And that would be very selfish of you.
Yeah.
If you try to make a decision for other people.
Yeah. You can't. You don't know their story. They're in their own castle. You're in your own castle.
Yes.
And so the decision pieces are that's not a community thing. Like when we're saying we're wired for connection, we're wired for connection to come together, to support, to flourish, to thrive, not beat each other up, right? That's not community. And so we need to deal with our own stuff and then come together and support each other from a place of flourishing and love and acceptance, so that we can then bring that forward as part of what we want to create in the future. I don't want a future filled with fear. I don't want a future filled with hate. I don't want a future filled with segregation and people, struggling in the darkness by themselves because they're too scared to reach out. We all have a responsibility. We were all born with a soul spark within us to shine. And if we each stepped forward and did what we could to shine brightly, then somebody in the darkness could see that, and that alone might be helpful for them to find their path, so that they can shine and then become a beacon for the next person, right? That's what community, that's what connection is about, is that we all have a role to play in this world. And if we're all locked in our own little houses with just ourselves, then we're all going to be, the darkness is only going to rise, right? The power is in each of us to step outside, to find that inner spark, to do what we need to do to connect, to flourish, so that we can shine and bring more light to this world. And in doing so, brighten our future, because it's going to take all of us. Nobody can do it for us. Nobody's leading the way. The governments aren't the ones that have all the answers. We all have the answers by stepping out and shining our own shine that we were meant to bring to this world. And if there ever was a time in all of human history where we need every single person to step out and shine their unique bright shine, now is the time. We are in the darkest time that we've ever been in human history. And it's calling to us. It's calling to our soul to say, rise. You need to shine. You need to do your thing in this world so that you can bring light to your space, so that inspires and encourages others to do it in their space. And across the world, if we all do that, it'll make a huge difference.
and have compassion for your neighbor. And
Exactly.
if each person have compassion for the neighbor, we can create a better world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful said, Shannon. Shannon, are you going to be teaching a class soon, or you are
Very
teaching?
soon. Yeah, I'm going to be setting up a group coaching program coming up in May. I'm still working out the dates for that, but it is coming up in May, and it's called Empowered Living. So it's just really about that. It's connecting within, identifying those external things that are influencing us, and then plugging into that inner net and bringing out that that inner power and that inner shine that each individual has to share.
If you're hearing this, guys, I highly recommend you to be checking, and we're going to be sharing this information later on in our in the same podcast, in this episode, so like that you can get a hold on Shannon, and like that you can sign up for her program. That sounds very interesting, and we all need to take layers, because I always believe
Yeah.
there are layers over layers, and you think you discover all the layers. No, there is another layer underneath.
Always, right? We're always growing and evolving into our potential and into our possibilities. So I like that. There's always layers.
Yes, like
Absolutely.
a peeling an onion. So we're peeling the onion of life.
That's right. Yeah.
And do you have something else that you would like to add?
I just want to thank you for the conversation. It's been fantastic, Monica. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening to us. And if this resonates with you, please share it. It may help someone else. You never know. So share it, please. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for being in Soul Talk.
Thank you.
Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell